Workflow like a pro. It is your new dude, your Bear Frere, your naked writer here with the naked truth. No sugarcoating, because then things get sticky. So we're going to be talking workflow today, in particular my workflow. It's going to be good for screenplays, going to be good for novels. I've gotten a lot of use out of it. Hopefully you get something out of it as well. Let's get into it. So it is basically a 3-document workflow. I have 3 documents open on my desk at all times. I can switch between them with Alt-Tab, never have to take my hands off the keyboard. Those documents are a timeline document, an outline document, and then a document for notes. Now, the timeline document is going to be basically, like it sounds, a timeline of the story. It's going to have all of my scenes or chapters broken down just to their most bare bones, and then like a 2 to 10 word scene heading that will be a shorthand to you to tell you what is in that chapter. So it doesn't have to be like so-and-so meets so-and-so at the coffee shop and they talk about this and then they think this and then he gets this from her and she gets this from him and they both leave. It can just be boy meets girl and then you remember what happens. Okay, so that is your timeline. It's going to allow you, once you have it populated with all of your scenes or all of your chapters, to look at your entire story on one page, to see how it flows, to see how it works in its bare bones, what should go where, etc. Okay, the next document is going to be your outline. Now, in your outline, you are going to take your scene headings from your timeline and you are going to flesh each one out. They're going to be in the same order. Identical order to the timeline, but there's going to be a page or a paragraph telling exactly what happens in that scene or chapter beneath each one. Now, this is where you're going to do your detail work. Very important. Every change in the outline must be reflected in the timeline, and every change in the timeline must be reflected in the outline. So if you change something in your outline that is going to affect your scene heading, then change your scene heading right there in your outline and then go and change it right away in the timeline. If you decide to move something in your timeline, go ahead and move it, but then go immediately to your outline and move it as well in your outline. Basically, these two are mirrors of each other, just one is much, much, much abbreviated. So, third document is for notes. That is, like it sounds, for ideas and notes, for questions you might have, for things you might want to think about. This can be things that you want to write in there you've already decided, but you don't want to deal with it right now, etc. The main purpose of this document is obviously, number 1, to organize your notes and your brainstorms, but number 2, it works real well when you have a bad day, have some writer's block, or don't feel like sitting down at the desk. You can basically spend your day going through your notes, looking at your questions, assessing each one, deciding which ones you want to implement, which ones you want to ignore, and then as you use them, you move them to the bottom of the notes document. So all your newest notes are at the top. As you address them, you move them down to the bottom. So it's an active sort of living document. Now, a lot of people are going to be with me on the outline, although there are some who aren't. They don't like outlining as well. I don't know what to say to these people, except for next week I'm going to try to convince them that outlining is the one and only way. Hallelujah. But we'll see. But yeah, next week I'm going to be talking about outlining. But there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be with me on the outline. They're going to be with me on the notes, but they're going to say this timeline thing, I'm not so sure. Why should I have an entirely separate document, an extra thing open on my desktop that I got to switch back and forth with and keep updated as I write? The reason is, for me, I have yet, I've written 9 screenplays, and I'm working on my second novel, and screenplays are all about plotting. They're all about story structure. They're all about outlining and making each beat count. Now, if you look at your document, look at your story in one page, you are going to see it in a different light than when you read all of the details. You're going to see in the broad strokes if it works in its bare bones. You're going to see if something is sort of fatty, if it shouldn't be there, if something should be moved. You're going to see maybe a twist that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. I don't know what you're going to see. It's your story. You got your own style, but trust me, if you take whatever you're working on right now, you reverse engineer a timeline for it, and you just look at that timeline and see your whole story laid out in one page, you're going to see something good there. You're going to figure something out. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, write in the comments that I'm an idiot It's okay, I can take it. But it works for me. So this 3-document workflow, this is the bulk of my writing, or it was the bulk. It has always been the bulk of my writing. I spend about 6 to 9 months on an outline, and then I spend 1 to 2 months transforming that outline, or I like to say translating it into either a screenplay or a novel, depending on what the project is. But that word translate, I like to think of it as more of a translation than an act of creation when I'm doing that final form. It allows me to focus on the final form, focus on the prose, or if I'm writing a screenplay, focus on the dialogue, not have to think about the story. And I don't know, it just makes things a lot easier for me. But the bulk of the work is already done in those 6 to 9 months of outlining and working in this 3-document system. Now, ideally, you do a couple drafts of your outlines over the course of those 3 months. You're not just, or those 6 to 9 months, you're not just working in a vacuum. I like to do about 3 drafts, and ideally take a little break before I read each one, see them with some fresh eyes, and have a chance to be surprised by what I have there. But if you've got readers, that's good too. But the important thing is to be able to look at your story in one page, to be able to look at your story as an outline, and to make sure that your story works there before you turn it into either a novel or a screenplay. Okay, you might be able to save your story with some really good prose writing, a really descriptive battle scene, or a really steamy sex scene, or I don't know what you're into, but the story is not going to be as good as it could be. Why not make the story great and then add your super awesome prose? You'll have the greatest book that was ever written. So make sure your story works on its own. Use this timeline, use this outline. You're going to see your story like you never saw it before. You're going to see ways of making the twists and turns much more, just better, more efficient, and better. That's not the greatest word for a writer, but I'm going to use it anyway. Better. I said it. All right, so I'm the Naked Writer, signing off with the Naked Truth. Workflow like a pro. See you next time. Peace.